I remember the night it all began, because it didn't feel like the beginning. Felt like the end. The wind had picked up outside, heavy with the scent of storm and salt. A summer squall rolling in from the Atlantic, brushing up against the stone cliffs outside our Rhode Island estate. The sky was bruised purple, flashes of lightning dancing across the ocean like some silent warning. I was in my study, lights dimmed, curtains half drawn, watching the feed from our security system on the wide screen in front of me. At first, I wasn't even looking for anything. I was just restless. My name is Julian Cross. If you've heard of me, you probably know the version of the story that makes the papers. Founder and CEO of Crossline Developments, a luxury real estate empire spanning 3 continents. The man who turned marshland into megaprojects and foreclosed dreams into diamonds. That's what they say. But no newspaper ever tells the truth about a man's home, or the things he ignored to keep it looking pristine from the outside. That night, the footage showed my dining room. 12 feet of imported oak, crystal glassware set like museum pieces. My wife, Eliza, at the head of the table, laughing. She was still as striking as the day I met her. Emerald dress hugging every inch of power she wielded so effortlessly, her golden hair twisted up like a crown. She was surrounded by her usual circle. Women with perfect teeth and hollow smiles. Men with grins like knives. And then there was him, Dr. Marcus Vale, fertility specialist, family friend, godfather to our youngest son. The man whose hand brushed hers just a second too long. The man whose smile didn't reach his eyes when he looked at me, but lit up like a bonfire when he looked at her. For a moment I thought, no, I'm being paranoid. But then Eliza leaned in, whispered something. He laughed, and she touched his wrist in a way that made my stomach turn. There it was. Not a single kiss, not a naked body. But betrayal doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it whispers through silk and silver. I sat back in my chair and let the storm outside speak for me, rumbling low across the ocean. That should have been the moment I confronted her. But I didn't. Not yet. Because I'd learned something in business. Never act on emotion when you're still bleeding. 3 days later, I sat across from my oldest daughter in a coffee shop on the Upper West Side. Hazel-eyed, whip-smart, and stubborn as hell, Ava had just turned 22. She was finishing law school early, top of her class. She didn't look like me. She looked like Eliza, but I loved her fiercely. "You okay, Dad?" she asked me that day, stirring her espresso with the same concentration she used to solve puzzles as a kid. "You've been distracted. Just work." I lied. The Dubai deal's turning into a circus. She didn't buy it. "You know, Mom was asking about you," she said. "She thinks you're pulling away." Pulling away? No, sweetheart. I was being pushed. "I'll talk to her," I promised. Another lie. Tasted like ash in my mouth. What Ava didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd already hired someone. A former FBI agent named Calder. Clean-cut, efficient, ruthless in the ways that mattered. He'd started digging the morning after the dinner party. And within a week, the first truth dropped like a guillotine. According to travel records, phone data, and background surveillance, Marcus Vale had been in the same city as Eliza on every single occasion I was away on business for the past 15 years. Sometimes for just hours. Sometimes for days. Once, for 2 weeks straight, the exact period Eliza had told me she was attending a wellness retreat in Arizona. It didn't stop there. Calder had also obtained medical records from a source inside Vale's clinic. There were anomalies, substituted samples, swapped donor IDs, tampered forms. 5 of them. 5. I have 5 children. And now, I had to ask a question that no father should ever have to whisper in the dark of his own mind. Were any of them even mine? The night I confronted the possibility, I didn't sleep. I stood in the hallway outside their rooms, watching the rise and fall of their breathing. Ava, my brilliant star. Liam and Lucas, the twins, athletes and jokers, both off at college. Serena, my little artist, the quiet one with an old soul. And Noah, my youngest, just 15, curious, compassionate, still thinks the world is made of more good than bad. How do you look at your children? The people you've protected, fed, clothed, held through fevers and nightmares, and suddenly wonder whether their blood ever ran through your veins. And worse, whether that had ever mattered at all. I didn't cry. I don't cry. But I felt something that night I hadn't felt since I stood in the rain at my father's funeral. Helpless. Only this time I wasn't burying a parent. I was preparing to bury the illusion of my marriage. That's when I made the decision. Not to confront Eliza. Not yet. I would do what I've always done. Gather evidence, build leverage, wait for the perfect strike. Because if she had spent the last 2 decades constructing a fortress of lies, she'd forgotten who taught her how to build. I was the architect. And I'd tear it all down brick by lying brick. The next 2 weeks I lived like a ghost in my own house. Every "I love you" from Eliza tasted like arsenic. Every family photo on the wall felt like a crime scene. But I smiled. I kissed her cheek when she leaned in. I poured her wine at dinner, asked about her tennis club, nodded along as she gushed about some charity gala she was organizing with her sister Camilla, the family's lawyer and, in hindsight, the engineer of a much larger betrayal. Camilla. Always smiling. Always impeccable in posture and judgment. The woman who had handled every real estate deal our family touched since Ava was born. If Eliza was the queen, Camilla was the general, the one who made things happen quietly, precisely, and absolutely. They thought I was blind. Maybe I had been. For years. But now my eyes were open, and what I saw behind their perfect veneers made my stomach turn. Calder worked fast. He'd already acquired the clinic's internal logs under a fabricated subpoena. What he uncovered was surgical. Between 2002 and 2018, every time Eliza had walked into Vale's clinic, her treatment coincided with my overseas trips. More disturbingly, in each of those cycles, the sperm sample ID listed on record did not match mine. One name kept appearing, but inconsistently. Marcus Vale. Except even that didn't check out. Julian, Calder said when we met in a hotel suite downtown. I don't think this was about love. Or even just about Vale. I think they were running a scheme. A scheme. I asked, sitting forward. He nodded, sliding over a folder of documents. 5 properties. 5 pregnancies. And every time a child was born, a property title was transferred to your wife's personal trust. Drafted by her sister. Not yours. Not the company's. Hers. I flipped through the pages. Each one was a memory I once cherished, now turned against me. The beach house in Montauk right after Liam and Lucas were born. The chalet in Aspen a month after Serena's arrival. The brownstone in Manhattan, a gift I'd thought spontaneous, tied to Ava's birth. And the Paris apartment. Our secret haven, bought after Noah. My heart turned to lead. I had gifted my legacy, piece by piece, to the woman who used motherhood as a weapon, and now I was looking at the receipts of my own manipulation. That night, I sat in Noah's room while he did homework. 15 years old. He was asking questions about market manipulation in an economics class. I almost laughed. You know, Dad, he said, adjusting his glasses, it's kind of crazy how companies can mislead people for years and no one notices. I stared at him for a long second. Yeah, I said. It's usually not the fraud itself that destroys things. It's when the truth finally shows up. He blinked. You okay? Just tired, I replied. But I'll help you understand it. Because if anyone was going to teach him how the world really worked, it damn sure wasn't going to be the man who might have fathered him without consent. I ordered the first DNA test in secret. It was Ava. Of all of them, she had been the one I felt closest to. The one I thought mirrored my ambition, my discipline. She even called herself a younger version of you, Dad, once, and I believed her. When the results arrived, I waited until the house was empty. I closed the study door. Sat at the desk. Opened the envelope. 0% match. No biological relation. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I just stared at the number. There's a kind of grief that doesn't scream. Doesn't cry. Just tightens slowly in your ribs until you can't breathe anymore. That's what I felt. Like drowning in a room full of oxygen. I had rocked that baby to sleep. Had held her tiny hand when she broke her arm in 2nd grade. I cheered her graduation with tears in my eyes. And now I was being told she was no more my child than a stranger on the street. But I loved her. God help me, I still did. And if I loved her, what did that make me? I needed answers. So I did something I told myself I'd never do. I played dirty. I bribed a former nurse from Vale's clinic. She met me in the back of a cafe on 9th Street, chain-smoking like she was still in her 20s. You Julian Cross? She asked. Yes. She slid over a worn folder. You didn't hear it from me. Inside were copied patient logs, handwritten notes from 15 years ago. And one of them made my blood run cold. Donor substitution complete. Confirmed, not husband. Patient insisted on discretion. Doctor approves. Signature, MV. Another one, a year later. Sister handled legal paperwork for property acquisition, trust built under private LLC. They weren't careless. They were calculated. That night, Eliza came to bed late, smelling of wine and orchids. She slid beside me like nothing was wrong. We should go to Venice for the twins' birthday, she whispered. Something special. I found this villa. How long have you been sleeping with Marcus? I asked, not looking at her. She froze. The silence stretched. Then she did what she always did, she laughed. Dismissively. Are you serious? Deadly. Eliza, I said, turning toward her finally. I know about the samples. The property transfers. The clinic. I know everything. Her face didn't crumble. It shifted. Like a mask being peeled off. Then I suppose, she said coldly, you've realized you're not as smart as you thought. I'm smarter now, I said. And I haven't even started. She turned away, eyes flat. You won't hurt the children. You're not that man. No, I said, lying again. I'm not. But I had already ordered DNA tests for the rest. And I already knew I wouldn't survive what I was about to find. But neither would she. There are a few moments in life when the ground doesn't shift beneath your feet, it disappears entirely. That was me 1 week later in my private office at our Manhattan headquarters. High above the city, 45 floors up, with a sky the color of steel stretched beyond the glass. I had 5 sealed envelopes in front of me. Each one the result of a covertly collected DNA test. Each name scrawled in neat ink. Ava. Liam. Lucas. Serena. Noah. One by one, I opened them. One by one, I died. Not mine. Not mine. Not mine. Not mine. And then the 5th. Noah. My boy. My kind, gentle boy. The one I held in the hospital with tears in my eyes because I truly believed he was my second chance at being a better man than my father had been. But Noah, too, was a stranger in my blood. The silence in the room was deafening. The only sound was my breath, shallow, mechanical. All 5 of them. Not a single drop of me in any of them. And that should have broken me. Should have hollowed me out until there was nothing left but rage and whiskey. But strangely, it didn't. Because by then I understood something Eliza never would. Fatherhood isn't earned in bed. It's earned in every sleepless night, every whispered word of comfort, every sacrifice made in silence. They weren't mine by biology. But they were still my children. The only thing I'd ever done right. And I would protect them even if I had to burn down everything else. That same evening, Calder met me at the penthouse. He had more. Of course he did. Eliza and Camilla's scheme wasn't just about deception, it was a machine. A legal structure built with surgical precision to funnel property, assets, and estate leverage into a web of offshore trusts, LLCs, and shell accounts. Every time a child was born, Camilla redrafted asset protections. Every gift I thought I gave Eliza was actually paperwork Camilla had slid in front of me at just the right emotional moment. You were their engine, Calder said, handing me a thick stack of transfer records. They just drove the car. They used the children, I whispered, to grow the estate. They used your name to build theirs, Calder corrected. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Because then he handed me the final file. The bombshell, he said. I held this one until I had confirmation. Inside were medical board documents. Internal reports from Vale's clinic. Testimonies from 2 nurses. Marcus Vale wasn't the biological father either. In fact, none of the 5 children matched him at all. They came from separate donors. Anonymous. Random. Sourced from what the clinic called Class A private pool, a euphemism for genetically vetted, high IQ, tall, attractive donors willing to remain unknown. It wasn't a love affair. It was a eugenics-based investment strategy. My wife, the woman who kissed my neck every night, had chosen to breed with catalog-selected men in order to build what she later referred to in one intercepted call as a future dynasty. And her sister had written the legal code to protect it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, frozen. Then I asked one question. Is it all documented? Calder nodded. Every step. Good, I said. Because now we go to war. I made 3 phone calls that night. The first to Benjamin Farrow, my personal corporate attorney in London. A man known for cutting through legal defenses like a scalpel through silk. I need a full trust structure drafted, I told him. Everything. Lock out the mother. Lock out the aunt. Protect the children. I assume there's context, he asked. You'll have all files in 24 hours. The second call to Madeline Sharp, a high-profile investigator for the State Medical Board. Dr. Vale has been artificially inseminating women with unauthorized donor material, I told her. And I can prove it. She didn't hesitate. Email me the evidence. I'll open the case tonight. The third to a woman I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. Her name was Clara Mendez, a trust litigation specialist who once dismantled a billion-dollar divorce fraud in Monaco. Eliza Cross, I said. You remember her? A pause. Your wife? Clara asked, tone suddenly cold. Ex-wife soon, I replied. Let's rip the mask off. Within 48 hours, we'd filed the preliminary paperwork to challenge every single property transfer since Ava's birth. Under the guise of fraud. The crux of our argument, that Camilla, as legal counsel, had operated under multiple conflicts of interest, failed to disclose donor-based non-parentage, and had orchestrated systematic asset misrepresentation. That alone made every contract she touched contestable. But we didn't stop there. We opened an anonymous channel with the New York Bar Association's Ethics Committee detailing Camilla's forged timestamps, post-signature edits, and concealed fiduciary stakes in the shell companies she'd used. Then came the Fertility Board complaint with records, audio files, and nurse testimonies. Marcus Vale's name was about to be dragged into the public square. And Eliza? She had no idea. She still thought she was playing chess. She didn't realize I'd flipped the board. By the end of the week, I sat in my office watching Eliza on a security feed. She was at our Montauk house, laughing over wine, barefoot on the porch, talking to Camilla on speakerphone. I patched in audio. They suspect nothing, Camilla said. Even if Julian found the records, he'd never risk the public scandal. I don't care anymore, Eliza replied. Once Noah's in college, I'm filing. I've got the Hamptons, Aspen, Manhattan. Let him keep the business. I'll be free. Camilla snorted. He's a builder. He'll build another empire and forget us all. Eliza smiled. Let him. All I wanted were the foundations. I closed the feed. Then I leaned back. And smiled. Because tomorrow I'd be filing the trust. And this time? I was building something they'd never touch again. The papers were filed on a Wednesday morning. By Thursday, the first ripple hit. Camilla's office received a formal ethics complaint from the Bar Association. Buried in it, timestamps, financial forensics, audio files of her advising Eliza on donor substitution while drafting maternal asset protection clauses. The accusation? 20 years of legal malpractice and fiduciary fraud. On Friday, Marcus Vale's practice was placed under emergency audit. A nurse-turned-whistleblower handed over internal logs detailing more than 40 unauthorized inseminations, a pattern of fertility fraud stretching back nearly 2 decades. The press caught wind. A single headline spread like wildfire. Prestigious fertility doctor accused of deliberate donor deception, civil suits mounting. By Saturday, Eliza tried to transfer ownership of the Aspen property into a newly created shell LLC. It failed. Blocked by the trust structure I'd activated 48 hours prior. Her call came at 1:14 a.m. I let it ring. She called again. I picked up. You bastard, she hissed. What the hell have you done? Returned everything to its rightful owner, I said calmly. You think you're punishing me? She spat. You've destroyed your family. No, I said. You did that. I'm just clearing the wreckage. A pause. Then the voice I'd once loved whispered, I gave you children. No, I said. You gave me strangers and called them mine. I raised them. I loved them. You sold them for square footage. And then I hung up. That was the last time I spoke to Eliza Cross. 3 days later, I met with the children. Not all at once, I couldn't. I wasn't strong enough. First, Ava. We sat in the rooftop cafe of her university, the breeze soft and warm. I need to tell you something, I said. And I won't sugarcoat it. I handed her the folder, DNA, property records, the medical reports. She didn't speak. Just read. After 15 minutes, she whispered, You're saying. I'm not your daughter. No. I'm saying you weren't born of my blood. But you were my daughter. Always were. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't care, she said. I don't care, Dad. I broke then. Not with anger, not with vengeance. But with relief. The same conversation repeated with Liam and Lucas, both initially furious, fists clenched, voices raised. But when they saw the scope of the lie, when they saw the smug precision of Camilla's documents, the rage turned inward. Serena didn't say anything for a long time. She just asked, Did Mom ever love us? I think she loved the idea of what you could give her, I said. But real love? I don't think she ever understood what that was. And Noah? My boy sat with the file in his lap, unmoving. Finally, he looked at me and asked, "So who am I?" "You're the son I chose every day for 15 years, I said. "That's all that matters." He nodded once. Quiet. Still. Then I choose you too." A week later, everything broke in public. Marcus Vale was indicted for medical fraud, gross negligence, and civil violations. His license was stripped. His practice closed. The lawsuits came in waves. Camilla was disbarred. Her own firm turned on her. Former clients filed malpractice suits en masse. Investigators seized hard drives, froze accounts. She lost her office, her license, her legacy, all because she believed she could outright the truth. And Eliza? She lost everything. The houses. The accounts. The respect of her children. The right to even step foot on properties now held by a trust she had no access to. She tried to spin it in interviews. Claimed I had manipulated the narrative. Claimed I was jealous. Claimed it was an outdated notion of bloodlines and masculine control. But then the internal clinic memos leaked. And the audio recordings. And suddenly, Eliza Cross wasn't a society darling anymore. She was a cautionary tale. The face of the mask that cracked. Months passed. Ava graduated with honors and joined a law firm in D.C. focused on ethics reform. The twins transferred schools, switched majors, no longer interested in finance but in restorative justice. Serena entered therapy. Wrote music. She started talking again. Noah came to live with me in London. We rented a small flat overlooking the Thames. Simple. Clean. Honest. Every morning he made tea. Every night I told him I was proud of him. Because I was. Because they all survived. Because they didn't become their mother. 1 year later, I walked past the Montauk property, now managed by the Children's Trust. It was being converted into a retreat for young people recovering from betrayal-based trauma. Ava's idea. I stood outside the gates for a long while. I saw the ocean crashing just beyond the dunes. And I thought about how easily it all could have ended differently. If I'd yelled. If I'd burned it all to the ground. But I didn't. I dismantled it. Quietly. Completely. And now the truth lived here. Not Eliza. Not Camilla. Not Vale. The truth. People think revenge is about rage. But real revenge? It's peace. It's clarity. It's watching your enemy destroy themselves with the weapons they forged to use against you and knowing you never needed to swing once. Because you had one thing they never did.